Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, you thirsty bunch of beer drinkers, whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. Thanks for pressing play and supporting a purely Canadian podcast. I'm Troy Birch with Great Lakes, Ontario's local brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery at that, based right here in Etobicoke, who brings you this here podcast, Between Two Fermenters. Well, the NHL playoffs are here, patio time is right around the corner, the Blue Jays are finally hitting some bombs, beer festivals are fast approaching, and we're about to enter the unofficial start of the beer season here in the province. Exciting times ahead. As exciting as today's episode. Let's get right at it. We're going to talk about Muskoka Brewery, the one, out of Muskoka, founded in 1996 on a dream cooked up in 1994 by Gary McMullen and Kirk Evans. They located the brewery in Bracebridge, Ontario, quickly becoming a community staple. Located on Taylor Road in an old granary building that was one of the first businesses you'd come across when entering the downtown area, it embodied the look and spirit of Muskoka with their beers and their branding. In 2008, McMullen met Toronto businessman and longtime Muskoka cottager Bob MacDonald through a mutual friend who really loved the beer and the premise of the business, sparking discussions about a partnership. Shortly after, MacDonald bought out the brewery's roughly 40 shareholders to become the majority owner and started streamlining decision-making. After outgrowing their original location, the brewery moved to its current home on Muskoka Beach Road in 2012, and things really took off. The once small team has grown to over 130 employees, and one of those is the energetic Kristin MacDonald, who we welcome on the show today. Kristin is the current Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Muskoka, where she's been leading the vision and strategy since June 2024. But her story with the brewery goes much deeper, spanning over a decade in nearly every corner of the business. From her early days as a summer brand rep in 2010, Kristin climbed the ranks through field marketing, key account management, regional sales leadership, eventually taking on roles like the Senior Director of Growth and Functional Beverage and Director of Sales, where she also worked across Vancouver Island Brewery and Raleigh Beer Co., two companies acquired by Krismark Holdings, the family business. I'm excited for this conversation. Really, I am. It's been a while since Kristin and I sat down and talked shop. So let's crack a beer and get at it. We'll be right back with Kristin MacDonald, Vice President of Sales and Marketing with Muskoka Brewery. Hang tight.
Supporting local is more important than ever. Grab your morning coffee from a local cafe. Purchase fresh bread from your local bakery. Visit your neighborhood mom and pop shop or visit their online store. Secure your lunch or dinner from a bar or restaurant on your block. Local business needs your love, your support. Prop up your neighbors, man. Shop local. Your purchases, that money, it stays within your community. Now crack a beer as a reward, because you deserve it, and so do they. Supporting local never tasted so good. A kind message from your friends at Great Lakes Brewery. GLB, brewed for you, Ontario.
Hello, Kristin. It's awesome to have you here joining me on the podcast today. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am spectacular, thanks. It is a dull and rainy day here in Etobicoke as we record this episode. So if I may, I'd like to offer you a bit of sunshine with this here can of Sunnyside Session IPA.
Great. Thank you. Crack
that open and let's see if there we go. And the sun just came out.
Troy, I think it's funny. I think we met at Sunnyside Pavilion.
I was
so it's a good beer for this.
I was actually going to bring that up. We might as well. We'll save that story for later. We're going to save that story
later,
yeah.
But
we just recently talked about that. Cheers! Are you ready for this today?
I'm ready.
Oh, that's delicious. Mm-hmm. Before we dive into everything I've mentioned that we'd cover off the top of the show, can you please give the listeners a snapshot of who you are outside of work? Like a brief bio of who is Kristin MacDonald.
Sure. So I was born in Mississauga originally, lived there till I was about 8 years old. And then I lived in New Jersey until about high school and then moved back to Oakville. But I'll say that all through that, we had the family cottage up in Dorset. So that's really been...
Dorset rocks.
Dorset's the best. We're on Quagga Lake. And that's really been the family home that we always come back to for my entire life. So that's, I kind of say where I'm from at this point. But then, outside of that, love to travel. I am always kind of planning my next trip of where I'm going to go. Love sports, grew up playing soccer, recently have been more involved with like Olympic weightlifting. I just like to bar hop. I love restaurants.
Yeah, I'm never gonna mess with you. I've seen your Instagram account. Dorset, you guys are like less than 4 kilometers from where my wife and her family's cottage is on a smaller lake. Yeah. But Dorset is just a beautiful country, we say.
Oh yeah. Gotta go get some frozen yogurt and jump off the bridge there in town. It's a classic.
We jumped off the bridge when we first got there, so I was just out of high school, I guess, when we went up there. But you see kids doing it now, and I'm the old man going, "Oh, watch for the boats! Watch for the boats!"
Yeah.
But this is not a cottage. Well, we are going to tie in cottage maybe, but it's not a jumping the lake type of podcast. We want to talk about beer with you today. So, let's hear the story about how Bob MacDonald, your father, came to be the majority owner of Muskoka Brewery.
Yeah, sure. So, he was talking to a family friend who actually owns the marina on our lake. So it starts in Dorset, actually. Don Abel was the owner of the marina. He was a friend of my dad's, and he had previously worked for Molson Coors in the States and had, retired, but then was running the marina on the lake. And my dad was down having a beer with him, and he had cream ale on tap at his place, and they were drinking cream ale, and my dad asked him, like, what is this beer? And he said, this is the best beer that I've ever had. It's called Muskoka Cream Ale. It's made in Bracebridge. My dad was like, oh, wow, that's like a really significant thing to say from someone who's worked in the beer industry for their entire career. And Don had met Gary before, knew that Gary was kind of looking for investors in the company, and he introduced my dad to Gary, I guess would have been 2008. And they, I'll say, kind of like dated, like talked to each other for about 6 months or so.
The beer's good for that. Good.
Exactly.
Opening people up, telling secrets and stories. And
and they talked about their, mutual understanding of a vision going forward, and where they would potentially want to take the company. And then my dad always says, it was the Muskoka name, like having Muskoka Brewery as a name in craft beer. He always says is like having the Kleenex name in the tissue business. Like it was such a good name, such good branding and positioning in terms of where we could take the company.
And so that happened, that a deal was made. And so that was 2008. So you're young, you're a lot younger than I am. Like Peter Bullitt, the owner of Great Lakes, his father bought the Great Lakes when Peter was 21. So I assume the thought of the family getting into the beer business when you were so young was pretty great. Was that something like, oh my God, Dad, you're buying into a brewery?
Yeah, I mean, I was 18.
That's young.
I was young. Yeah, so I was like, I'll say he bought it right at the end of 2008. I was already at university and was like about to turn 19 in a couple months. I honestly at the time thought he was insane. I was like, what are you doing buying a brewery? I didn't fully get it at the beginning. I'll say I came around quite quickly. Yeah. He sent me back to school with a case of beer when I went back after Christmas of, at the time it would have just been Muskoka Lager. So, and then it became very exciting. But at the beginning I was like, I don't understand what's happening.
So after that first case went back to university with you, did you know you wanted to go in the direction of the beer direction, or was there any thought to pursue the Wakefield Canada route, your father's other company? Yeah,
it's a good question. I'll say after first year, I actually did go work at Wakefield. So, and I had worked there in the summer the year before. So, I had always kind of thought potentially I would go in that direction if I were to stay in the family business. So I did work there for the summer after we bought the brewery. And just by the end of the summer, I was like, this isn't necessarily for me. I don't see myself selling motor oil. And it was actually my mom that suggested like, okay, well, what if you like worked at the brewery next summer and you could live at the cottage. And
oh, okay, it seals the deal right there then, right?
And I was like, oh, that's actually like, you know, it wasn't something I had thought necessarily of, you know, but then I did go in that direction the next summer when I was 20, and I just fell in love with it.
And that's where we can bring back up the story of meeting in 2010.
Yes.
So yeah, I was going through my old photos, looking for something. I'm not even sure what I was looking for, but up pops a picture of you at the Sunnyside Pavilion for Sessions. It was a session craft beer festival. That was 2010, and you have a concerned look on your face. You're holding a phone up to your ear, and we'll be sure to share the picture when we put out this podcast. But you started as a summer brand representative, correct?
Yes, yeah.
And tell me what was going on in that picture.
So summer brand rep, I think, was just an all-encompassing term of a lot of different things that I was doing that summer. So I started, I guess that was 15 years ago, like right now. So it would have been at the end of April. At the time, we had just gotten rid of our sales agency that was selling into LCBO for us. I had no idea LCBO or Muskoka had a sales agency. Yeah. So we had a sales agency. They had just gotten rid of them. At the time, the vice president of sales was Craig Prentice, who you know. And they're in the process of hiring some retail reps, but they needed to fill a gap. So I spent 6 weeks driving all over Ontario to every place that we had beer listed and basically going in and saying, hi, I'm from Muskoka Brewery. We are hiring people, I swear. Do you need me to swap any beer out to make sure you guys have the freshest product? And also, do you want to bring in this 5-pack or 5-liter keg of cream ale while we're at it? And it was definitely like a quick introduction into the LCBO and the beer industry. And, you know, I basically drove all the way out to Ottawa and up north and went everywhere that had our product listed. So I did that for about 6 weeks.
That's a good way to get your feet wet in the industry that you don't know.
Absolutely. For sure. Yeah. And I mean, working for Craig was awesome. You know, he's kind of a legend.
A weathered, seasoned veteran.
For sure. So I did that. And then after 6 weeks, so kind of coming into May 24, we had hired people. And then I started working events. So I was working for Mike Laba, who was the head of marketing at the time. And they had me, you know, running all over the province, running the events and beer festivals that were happening, as well as spending time trying to reach out to local businesses in Bracebridge to be like, can we bring our beer to your event? Like, this was, you know, a time when there weren't a ton of beer festivals.
Brand new, 2010. Yeah, it was right at the start of the whole second boom. Big wave of the boom. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, you know, we were trying to get our product in front of as many people as possible. So I was calling every local event in Bracebridge saying, like, we'll bring beer. We just want to sample people. And I was also helping our rep, the Muskoka region rep, who still works for us. His name's Stephen Turhar. I was like running POS around his bars.
Stephen tells the best stories.
Stephen's the best. Yeah. So, you know, I was doing kind of like, and then also working in the tap room. So I was kind of going wherever they needed me to go.
And that's in my opinion, the best way to learn the company is to start there, get to know the people that are selling the beer, get to know the people in your own company that are selling the beer, but seeing customers on a daily basis in the tap room or at an event, it creates that personal connection that really helps drive sales, future sales. So you started in 2010 doing that, getting your feet wet. Before we go through your journey through all the different positions you've had or you have had at the brewery, let's just talk about Muskoka for a bit. So everything Muskoka, the history of the brewery. So I mentioned 1996. Actually, it was a thought in 1994. It took them 2 years to get it going. But tell me the history of the brewery up until today.
Yeah, so it was opened in 1996 by Gary McMullen and Kirk Evans. They grew up playing hockey and lacrosse together in Huntsville. We're childhood friends, and you know, Gary had gone to school to be an aerospace engineer and was hoping to be a pilot with the Canadian Forces. And the story, you know, that he's told me is that when he was going for his pilot test, he had a very the most scary instructor that like really tells you if you pass the test or not. And he was quite nervous. And when he was coming in to do his landing, a groundhog ran across the runway, and he hit the runway a little harder than he should have, did not pass his test, and then decided he was going to open a brewery instead of going into the armed forces. So he, I always kind of say like the groundhog was kind of what pushed him into beer. So thank God for that groundhog.
You guys should come out with some sort of a groundhog
groundhog beer.
Yeah, groundhog beer.
Yeah. So him and Kirk opened the brewery. Gary, was, I'd say, more on the ops and brewing side. Kirk was more on the sales and marketing side, and they opened the brewery in June 1996. And unfortunately, 2 months later, Kirk was killed in a car accident on Highway 11. And Gary really had to figure out what he was going to do. And the town really rallied around him, both like people that were from Bracebridge or people that were friends and family of his, to invest in the brewery to keep it going. And he ended up getting an award. I think it was from the Canadian Brewing Awards. It was the best ale in Canada. For cream ale that year. So he took that as a sign from the beer gods to keep going. and here we are, almost, we're going to have our 30th anniversary next year. So that, that's the, I'll say, origin story. And then, you've touched on it, but my dad invested in the brewery in 2008, which gave us an opportunity to invest in distribution systems and a sales team to go and invest in a full marketing rebrand, which happened. A marketing rebrand was a big pivotal moment in Muskoka's lifetime. Yeah, so that happened in 2011, and I think that's what really put us on the map. A lot of people think that that's when the brewery was opened. They don't realize. Yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, we're about to, we're gonna have our 29th brewery this June. People are like, what? Like, I didn't realize you guys have been around for that long. But it really was, I think, the launch of Mad Tom and the launch of that new branding that put us on the map across Ontario. And then Rethink was the company that did that, and we were selling beer to Rethink really at the time for their office. And then I remember they ended up letting you guys go as a client because their campaign was so successful with you that it acquired. Molson ended up going to them, which is funny because of the Muskoka chair and the lawsuit that happened years later. Yeah. So they came up with that. I mean, along with our team and Mike led a lot of that process at the time too. But I mean, that Muskoka chair logo has become so iconic, and that's, it was Rethink that did that work. Yeah. So that was 2011. What's happened since then? Because you guys have exploded. Yeah. So, I'd say like the next big landmark was Detour launching in 2014. That, quickly, saturated the market. It's still to this day our biggest brand. And I'll say that, if Mad Tom kind of put us on the map, then Detour took us to that next level of the brewery. And since then, we've gotten into RTDs. We now are selling non-alc. One of our other biggest brands that we've launched is called Tread Lightly. It's a light lager. It's available, across all retail channels and on premise. And it's interesting. I find, if you think about 2010 and journey through beer, when I first started working in craft beer, everyone was like, I just want to try all the beers and let's drink these big bourbon barrel aged stouts. And I let's have a competition of who can put the most beers on Untapped. And I feel like we've come full circle back to light lagers, and Tread Lightly is a brand that's really going to continue to be one of our biggest brands in our portfolio. It's doing well. Yes, it's doing quite well. Yeah. I remember the days where the Pilsner came out, and then and there was a silver can. That would have been, it was 2010. I was going to say it was around that time, and there was a big launch party back when breweries would throw a launch party for a seasonal beer, and that was at Highway 61 on Bayview. And I can remember drinking that beer going, oh, this is so good. This is a killer beer. And I think you guys have done it once or twice since then. We might have brewed small amounts of it, but what happened with that brand was it was called Pilsner Light. And the whole point of this is 2010. So the whole point of the brand is that it was 4%. It was like super approachable, but it still had a ton of flavor because it was from a craft brewery.
Yeah, and I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it might have been dry hopped. Don't quote me on that, but it was very flavorful, 4% Pilsner.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And the problem with that brand was that at the time, anyone who was willing to buy a beer that said light on it did not want flavor, and all the craft brewers or craft beer drinkers wouldn't buy it because it said light on it. So it was a bit ahead of its time.
It was a great beer. But so you mentioned some Tread Lightly, Craft Lager, Mad Tom, Detour, but you have a lot of other brands in the portfolio. So this is the time where you can just give her. Tell us about the other brands in the portfolio.
Yeah. So, I mean, I also mentioned Cream Ale, which obviously is the original beer in our portfolio, what the brewery's been built off of.
The bread and butter.
The bread and butter. Yeah. We've expanded off Mad Tom as well. So we have a brand called Hazed and Confused, which is a hazy IPA. We just launched a beer in LCBO called Aviator, which is a bicoastal IPA. It's part of the overall Mad Tom family. We also have a brand called Major Tom, which is a double IPA. So, we've kind of extended off of that Mad Tom base. And then we've got, a ton of seasonals. We've got Pineapple Ninja, which is about to come out on LCBO shelves for summer. We're also launching a Muskoka Margarita, which is a Margarita Gosa. So that's coming soon as well. And then, we have a lineup of hard sparkling water under our Muskoka Spirits brand. So we just relaunched the 12-pack with the new flavors in it. So we've got some new flavors, cherry lime and mango dragon fruit, which are, we're getting lots of great feedback on now. And
they're back in the LCBO already with the summer load in?
Yeah, it just switched over. We're also, going to have some other extensions coming off of that hard sparkling water line as well, and as Veer, which is our non-alc line. And we also have a brand called Rally, which I think we're going to eventually talk about.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. So if there's one beer from the core lineup or not that you're most proud of during your time with Muskoka, what would you pick from all the beers you've ever done?
From all the beers we've ever done, I have to say, honestly, Detour. It is our biggest brand, but for me, that was a brand that I worked on a little bit when we were developing it. It was, I think it was going to be actually a dry hopped lager. But our team had gone down to the Craft Brewers Conference and seen this like immersion of session IPA. So we ended up going in that direction. But I got to watch the process of the development of like the branding and the beer, because I was on the marketing team at the time. And then when we launched it in the marketplace, I had just switched to the sales side. So then I got to sell it and really talk about it. And it still to this day is my go-to beer within our portfolio. And, I think it's a huge reason for the success of the brewery and the expansion of growth.
So was that was 2014, you said?
Yes.
So was that a Rethink brand, like the design, or did you guys
it wasn't.
You guys had all the assets and you created it based on that new theme?
Yes.
And you nailed it.
It would have been, I think, right after a year after Rethink had let us go. So.
That's really inside baseball for
yeah.
So you mentioned Muskoka Spirits, which has played a huge part in the evolution of the brewery. I know there's been a lot of things happening with listings at LCBO over the past, and we've been part of that alongside Muskoka. But we've had some reversals, and the LCBO is going to be more accepting of small craft RTDs. What can you tell us about you mentioned the new summer, the 12-pack, but what can you tell us about Muskoka Spirits? What's that division all about?
Yeah, so it's it started with us making gin, actually. I think that was back in 2017 that we launched the gin.
Would have been one of the first breweries, I think, to do before Collective.
Oh,
maybe?
yeah, I think so.
I think so.
Honestly, I worked on a project in 2012 in the summer where I got to go look at this as an opportunity and basically do a feasibility study on, what's happening in the craft spirits market. And at the time we were like, we're ahead of this. Like it's not happening yet, but let's keep our eye on it. And then in 2017, we launched the legendary Oddity Gin.
That was one of my favorite beers of Spring Oddity.
Spring Oddity, yeah. So it was kind of based off of that.
Yeah.
We used a lot of the same botanicals that were in that beer. And then, eventually the RTD market started to take off. So we moved into, we've had a few different things within the Muskoka Spirits line. We had, it was called Docker, which was,
cucumber.
Yeah, it was like a cucumber, gin and tonic, which again, I think it was it was ahead of its time. It was a great brand.
Wasn't there like a lot of cucumber one year and then it's dialed back, or?
Maybe.
Yeah, I can remember people talking about like
the
1 year.
Cucumber is a polarizing flavor, which we learned.
Yes.
But yeah, we launched that, obviously like the cocktail side of things is starting to take off now. We would have launched that, I think it was in 2019, so or 2018. So it was ahead of its time, I'll say. And then in 2020, we launched the hard sparkling water, and we've been growing based off of that platform since then. And it's becoming a bigger part of our business. We've struggled with the fact, before a year ago, the only place you could sell it was the LCBO. So,
and you had to hit thresholds, and
you had to hit thresholds.
The big multinational conglomerates that were pumping it out for dollars on or cents on the can.
In order to keep the listing, like past P6, which, past August, you had to hit a pretty high dollar threshold. And last year we were very, very close to hitting it.
You were very, very close.
And in fact, like we did hit it, and we made a bit of an appeal to the LCBO, like you should, because it did get delisted originally, and then we made an appeal to the LCBO and they reversed the delist, which, was a huge decision. And because it ended up going back into the LCBO, and then we still had that SKU when the marketplace opened up. And we were now able to sell into grocery and convenience, and it was already ready to go. It was already SKU in our portfolio that had some branding.
A huge weight off the shoulders of people at Muskoka, though.
Oh, when we got the appeal?
Yeah.
When we won the appeal, it was very, it was a huge weight off the shoulders, because we were like, we need to keep this brand alive, because we've always thought that there was a huge opportunity for that brand, but being held to, the standard of White Claw and what they potentially could do, or even Cottage Springs, when Detour was originally launched, if we had been held to the standard of Molson, like, Detour wouldn't exist.
Very good analogy.
Yeah.
So I got to ask a question about the spirits side of business too. Did Muskoka find it hard to differentiate sales teams, marketing, when you're talking about, we're a brewery and we want to focus on beer, but we also have this other thing? And how did you intertwine the two to make it a very cohesive message from both a sales and marketing point of view?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the same team. So even to this day, the Muskoka Spirits brand is managed by Kira, who is our overall Muskoka Brewery brand manager. And a lot of it stemmed into making sure our sales team was trained on understanding what this product was. And we don't make the gin anymore. We ended up going in a direction of just saying we are good at putting things in cans. And really stepping on that side of our business, because, bottling gin is a very different process than making beer. So, generally it was, just making sure that people were trained, but at the same time, we were seeing people that are moving, from beer over to RTDs. So I think it was a natural extension of our brand. And giving people an opportunity to, if that's what they want to drink, they can stay within our brand.
I always ask this question to people that have a spirit side of the business. Are you still focused on beer first?
Absolutely.
And we do have a history with the the spirit side of things, we bought your still, the original
yeah,
still
yeah.
from Muskoka. It's sitting at Great Lakes. It makes our hand sanitizer and it makes our vodka soda. So it's a little side note to those listening. We're going to go back to you. So we've talked about the brewery, but I want to talk about you, and I'm fascinated with succession plans for some reason, and not just in the brewing industry. I like hearing and seeing what companies do internally to welcome the second or third, or even the fourth. I look at the Mooseheads of the world; they're on their 6th generation, which is crazy. This is something that I sense is happening with Muskoka right now, and you.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a family business, and I'm part of the family. So from that standpoint, it definitely is happening. From my perspective, like I've always just tried to learn as much of the business as possible. I love the company, and I'm trying to learn, especially from Todd, as much as I can.
It's Todd Lewin.
Lewin, who is the president. And he's been a mentor to me for almost my entire career. Like we basically started around the same time. So yeah, it's, I'm trying to learn as much of the business as I can, and also learning a bit about family business and succession planning. I went to a course through Richard Ivey called Family Shift back in 2017. And my dad wanted to send me to it. He's like, you should go to this course. And I was like, I don't need to go to this course. Like, it's just, it's going to be a waste of time. And he was like, you have to go to this course. So I went to it, and then I came out of it. I was like, I have so many questions, and so it was a really eye opening. And I think one of the stats that I learned in that is that most family companies don't make it. Like I think it's 97% of families don't make it past the 2nd generation. So that was interesting to learn. And then I've also been
unless you're a German brewery, because then you're into like 10th generation.
Yeah. Then you go forever. I don't know if that's a worldwide stat or if that's a like North American or Canadian stat, but and obviously it's not just breweries, it's all companies. But and then I'm part of a peer group as well that has other people who are in their family businesses. So we just get to talk about that, and I get to learn from them, which is great.
That is great.
Yeah.
Well, you said you wanted to learn every asset or every function of the brewery, and I mentioned your LinkedIn profile earlier. And looking at it, you've held 9 different positions at Muskoka.
Wow.
Since that first shift as a summer brand rep in 2010. So walk me through the journey. I'm not going to read every job you've had, but you've had a lot of different jobs.
I have had a lot of different jobs. So yeah, that first summer I was the summer brand representative, and I kind of went over what that was. The next summer I was the events coordinator. So at that time we had more events going on. So
and you couldn't get to all of them every weekend and you had to hire a team.
Had to hire a team. So I did have a team at that time. I think there was about 3 or 4 people. And we were both supporting the reps on premise, but also going to beer festivals across Ontario. And then the summer after that, I talked about the feasibility study. So I basically spent the summer doing that. I took a brief break where I moved to New York City, and I worked for, it's not on LinkedIn.
But you worked for another brewery, right?
I worked for a craft beer distributor in New York called Union Beer Distribution. Okay. So
what did that teach you about?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I had always wanted to move to New York, and I have American citizenship, so I can work down there. And so I moved to New York. I worked for this craft beer distributor. They had 250 brands in their portfolio because it's the 3-tier system, right? So I worked there for about 4 months, and they were basically training me to take over a territory in New York. And I learned a lot about like all the different craft beer. You were seeing how brands were kind of developed in the States, and a little bit about sales. It was like my first time back into sales since those first 6 weeks at the brewery. And at the time I found myself, so this is 2012, 2013, calling Mike Laba a lot, being like, what's going on? Like, and calling John Graham. And it felt like
John
something.
Graham gets a shout out. He's going to
shout
like
out
that.
John Graham. He definitely listens to the podcast.
Oh, he pretends he doesn't, but he does.
But I was calling people from Muskoka all the time just because I felt like I was missing out on something really special that was happening. And I had planned to go to New York for a year and then come back, and I wanted to prove to myself that I can work outside the family company. Yep. And but it just felt like the timing was bad because I was like, I'm missing this ride that's happening. And I had been talking to Mike, and he basically said, you know, if you want your old events job back, you can have it. I'm about to hire for it in about a week, but if you take it, I don't have to train anyone. So let me know if you want it. And I was like, yeah, I'll take it. And then I moved home. And then, it's funny, at the time, Todd was like, you could do that, or you could join the sales team. And I was like, I'm going to move back to Bracebridge. I want to work. I want to go back to Muskoka for the summer. So I spent the summer doing that. And then at the end of the summer, I was like, hey, actually, I do want to be in sales. So I moved to Toronto in December 2013. And I spent 2 years being the Toronto West sales rep, territory manager. Right downtown, which was like a full immersion into sales. Oh, for sure. It was so much fun. I had the best time. And then I did 2 years in field marketing. So I was basically, you know, the conduit between sales and marketing, coming up with programs for the reps to be running, mostly on premise, but a little bit community focused as well. And then in 2018, I moved into the key account manager role. So dealing with all the chain restaurants, you know, Joey, Recipe, Jack Astor's, like all of that. Honestly, might have been one of my favorite jobs that I ever had, which was surprising to me, to be honest. But it was like way more, I'll say, strategic. You're dealing with customers that really want a partnership that you know, can develop together. And I loved that job. I had a great time. And then at the end of 2019, I think I surprised a lot of people and I left. I'm giving quotations right now, but I had realized that I had spent most of my career working in the family company, but I had never worked directly with my dad. And I was like, he's getting older. You know, I really should take the opportunity to go learn from him. Because if I don't, I'm going to regret it. And so I left at the end of 2019. Went on a 3-month backpacking trip where I ended up back on my couch March 17th, 2020. Yeah.
COVID.
And then started working for Krismark, which is the family holding company that owns Muskoka Brewery, and Vancouver Island Brewery. So, and Wakefield, which is my dad's other business. So, I spent about 3 years there as director of business development. So I was working on projects that affected both Muskoka Brewery and Vancouver Island Brewery, and was kind of the conduit between the two breweries. And then, you know, I missed Muskoka Brewery quite a bit. And I came back, I guess it would have been the end of 2023, as senior director of growth and functional beverage. So this was around when we bought Rally. And when we were launching non-alc. So I was looking at, you know, opportunities around those, and then moved into senior director of sales in September 2023, and then VP of marketing.
There you go. VP of sales and marketing.
Sorry, VP of sales and marketing as of June. So it's been a whirlwind.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say you've left a couple times, but they pulled you back. What's the Al Pacino line?
Yeah. You always pull me back in.
They sucked me back in, or whatever. I'm pretty confident that you like Muskoka and you like the beer industry.
It's very hard for me to stay away.
I tried it once myself, and it
I remember that. How long that last? Like a
6
month?
6 weeks. Yeah. Why, in your own words, do you feel, though, that it was important for you to tackle all the different roles within the company to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm a generally curious person. So I like to understand how things work. And I've always felt that, you know, it's important to do these different jobs, to have the experience with the customers. Another beer opened. just have the experience with the customers, understand how these different pieces of the business work. And I learn best by doing. So, trying to tackle as many pieces of the business as possible gives me the best perspective overall on the brewery in terms of, being able to think strategically for the future, and be able to lead my team, especially on the sales and marketing side.
When I look at the industry and I look at the breweries in Ontario, because Muskoka had such significant growth during that period of 2010, 12 to where you guys are today, you're a unicorn. You really are. There's not many people in this industry that I would say have moved through the ranks over such an extended period of time that have literally touched every asset except brewing.
Yeah, I haven't done operations,
but it's pretty amazing to see
thank you.
how it's gone for you. And there's not many people that can say that in the Ontario craft industry, that they've moved like that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's been important to me to like, I'll say, understand the different areas, but also prove myself
for sure
to other people, as well as prove myself to myself that I'm capable of these different roles.
Myself to myself. I like that. It's a new beer name for you guys. Through it all, what is the one thing that you learned? What is the one thing that you learned that made the biggest impact?
I think the importance of the team. Like, really, at the end of the day, I think that's the most important piece. And it's a piece that I'm really, really passionate about. I love being on a team. I love, the overall Muskoka Brewery team. I think it's been really important for me to, I think I've been quite conscious about developing relationships across the overall brewery and how I carry myself within that. But, overall, it's like the importance of building a strong team, building a cohesive team, a team that supports each other, that celebrates when things are exciting, but that pulls together when things are hard. And, the past 5 years have been a multitude of hard and exciting. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, that's the biggest thing that has been cemented in me, is like the team is the most important piece.
Nice. And you have a good team and a lot of characters on your team.
I
Speaking
do.
of John Graham and Stephen Tahar. So let's talk a little bit about, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but some acquisition talk. So you mentioned Krismark, through Muskoka, purchased Vancouver Island Brewery in 2016. So they were one of the first craft breweries in the BC area. Can't remember how old they are off the top of my head.
Yeah, 1984.
1984. Around that time. What was the impetus behind that purchase in 2016?
Yeah, I'll say just to correct you and make sure that it's correct. The Muskoka didn't purchase Vancouver Island.
It was Krismark.
It was Krismark. Okay. So they are separate companies. Okay. I'll say, at the time, the previous owner, Barry of Vancouver Island, he approached my dad because he wanted to sell his business. He didn't want to sell it to one of the big guys, and he didn't have a succession plan in place for somebody to take over. And he had, seen what we had done with Muskoka Brewery, and he wanted to sell it to somebody who could take that brewery into the future. At the time, their branding hadn't changed much. It needed a bit of an evolution. And he saw, my dad as a potential for that. So he actually approached us. And we saw an opportunity to have a brewery on the West Coast, as well as, a brewery with so much history in craft beer. They were the first brewery on the island. They've been around since 1984. I think they're the second brewery after Granville in BC. And it looked, it fit very well, with Muskoka Brewery.
Yeah. And so maybe that answers the next question I had, because it wasn't Muskoka, but Vancouver Island never brewed Muskoka for BC, and Muskoka never brewed VIB beers for Ontario. Why was that? Yeah,
it was such small volume. So we didn't, when we originally were in BC, we didn't have Vancouver Island Brewery.
Yeah.
So, we've really stayed focused on our home markets, and making sure that we are as successful as we can be within the markets that we live and brew in. And we did do a brief stint back into BC a few years ago, but quite honestly, like the brewing, the tank size or the brew system size of Vancouver Island was just too big for us to brew that much beer for the market at the time.
They were former Molson people, if I'm not mistaken, as well, the original. And so I think they had grand visions of growing that brewery, because I did visit years ago, and I remember the size of it going, really, are you guys producing all this beer at this location? Because it was quite significant for a small craft brewery.
Yeah, the brewing system was huge.
Yeah, it was massive. So then in 2022, Muskoka purchased the contract brand Rally. Was that an attempt to get into the locale options, or to attract a different demo, or to bring a different demo into Muskoka? I
think it was a little bit of all of that. Yeah. You know, we saw an opportunity with Rally to go after a younger consumer, a different consumer. That is, you know, there is a lot of trends around health and wellness, around active lifestyle, and Rally was a brand that could talk to that in a different way than Muskoka could. Alan had done a great job of growing the brand in Ontario, specifically up in Collingwood and a little bit down in Toronto. And we saw an opportunity, for that to bring in a younger consumer, bring in a different demographic, but also it's a brand who's, you know, that could travel a little bit more than Muskoka Brewery can, because it's
doesn't say Muskoka on it.
Doesn't say Muskoka on it, and it's more about the activity than it is about the place. It's really about having a beer at the end of the run, you know, at the after pickleball. Do
you play pickleball?
I've played a couple times.
We sponsor pickleball, and it's huge in Ontario.
I love it. Yeah, I've played a few times. I really enjoy it. I was surprised at how much I liked it, and it seems to be taking off. We've got a partnership with Pickleplex for Rally.
With Rally? Okay.
With Rally, yeah. So we're building that brand specifically around these like active lifestyle moments and occasions, and you know that can go across Canada. So that we saw that opportunity. They also, you know, had a non-alc brand at the time. And that was a big reason for
to take it on.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Rally's been a successful acquisition. One of those, though, the VIB didn't really pan out the way that I would guess was hoped. Maybe not. I work a lot with, as the aforementioned Mr. Craig Prentice. Like I said, a legend in beer in his own right, on a number of federal GR stuff. So when news broke in 2024 that Vancouver Island was shuttering the actual brick and mortar facility and moving production to Phillips, it was the catalyst for a lot of discussions with elected officials about federal excise tax and why, you know, breweries can't grow to a certain size without getting dinged with a big tax bill. Can you shed any light on that tough decision to kind of pull the plug on that?
Yeah, so, you know, Vancouver Island Brewery is still around. We're just producing now at Phillips. Yeah. So we shut the brewery down.
The brick and mortar,
The brick and mortar part of the brewery, but the brand is still very much alive out there. So we all say, I mean, Troy, you know this because you've been working in government relations. It is hard to make a business profitable in craft brewing, and a lot of that has to do with taxation.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were really pushing for profitability at Vancouver Island. And I'll say the catalyst for the move was we got dinged with a really significant rent increase of the facility that we just couldn't take on. So we started looking at other options for, you know, producing the beer, partnering with other brands, especially given, you know, the growth rate of craft beer has slowed significantly since, I'll say, the heyday of the 2010s. And Phillips was, I mean, we used to joke you could like basically throw a football at, at their brewery from the old Vancouver Island Brewery. So it was a great opportunity for a partnership. You know, they were looking to bring a brand in for, you know, some extra capacity, and we've moved over there, and the relationship's going great. They were actually, the Phillips guys were just in Ontario. They came and visited us last week at the brewery, and yeah, it's been actually a really good move. for the brand out there, which is growing now, which is great.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think the Phillips guys were there right after we were there.
I think
visiting.
they were the day after.
That's too bad we missed them. Well, that's good news. I'm glad to hear that. So let's get back to the long-term plans for Muskoka before we get into some rapid fire questions.
Rapid fire.
The ones I always screw up. But we have a long-standing relationship with Muskoka, dating back to the actual Muskoka's beginning. You mentioned you have a great team. Well, many staff that have worked for Great Lakes have gone to work for Muskoka, or Muskoka reps have come and worked with us.
Yep.
Our senior sales manager cut her teeth really with us, then went to you to get more edged, and then back to us. But some of our leadership team members, I just mentioned, recently visited you guys, and you were excellent tour, open arm visit with us. Where do you want to take the brewery one day, seeing what your father, Todd, yourself, and that team has done for the brewery? Where do you want to take it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I'll say, obviously Todd is the one steering the ship right now. But I'll tell a quick story that I did the Prud'homme training with Roger Mittag, and I think this was back in 2018 or 2019. I was doing level 2 Prud'homme with Roger, and he was putting up all these slides where he trained you on Canadian beer history. Yeah. And there's, a slide on the Molson family and the Sleeman family and the Olin family. And, I remember sitting in that room and thinking like, okay, I want Muskoka Brewery to be on this list in 100 years. And like, really that is the dream.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's just like, our plan is to stay independent. It's a family company. And that's really the goal. So from, a long-term standpoint, like that is I'd say my dream is that if you're looking back at Canadian beer history 100 years from now, that we're on that list of somebody that made a big impact on the overall landscape.
That's cool. You have beers, RTDs that sell outside of Ontario. You have product in all retail outlets all across Ontario. What's next for Muskoka in the marketplace? What do the next 5 to 10 years look like?
Yeah, I think it's a great question given all the change that has happened in the past year.
We don't know what's going to happen January 1st,
You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The last year has been such a whirlwind of, changes. It's been quite exciting, but, it was a roller coaster for sure. I'm definitely never going to forget 2024.
No.
And I'd say overall, like, we're looking to expand on our and continue to grow our beer line. Mm-hmm. I do believe that that's going to continue to be a growing segment overall. I mean, all the stats say that, but there's more people that are looking for other occasions of drinking beer that potentially doesn't have alcohol in it. So I think we'll continue to do that. Potentially put some, expansion on our RTD line, which we've always hoped to continue to grow. And then generally for the beer side, I'd say we're really focusing on core brands, which is probably a theme for everybody.
It was something we decided to do 2-3 years ago to get back to that, and it's worked, humbly, knock on wood. It's continued to be right where we thought it would be. Yeah.
And it's I said this before, like everyone was, flirting with every type of beer style for a while. And it feels like we've come back full circle to, the steady eddies, the things that you're going to fill your cooler, your fridge with. And we just want to make sure that we continue to grow that and, have intentional innovation.
Stealing the name Steady Eddie. I like that. Okay. Have another sip of that beer. We're going to take a quick break and come back with some rapid fire questions. Hang tight.
Okay.
Here we go. When you hear the music, go for it.
Will do. The GLB Brew Pub. 20 taps of the finest craft beer. Amazing food like burgers, pizza, Taco Tuesday. And check the retail store for amazing GLB beer, merch, and accessories. Open 11 to 11 at 11 Lower Jarvis Street, right near Sugar Beach. We know where you're going tonight. The GLB Brew Pub. A great place to see, the best place to be.
Nailed it.
Well, that was an excellent conversation, Kristin, but now it's time for rapid fire questions. I'm going to try my best not to screw up. I'm counting on you to keep me on track here.
Okay.
What beer have you been enjoying recently, other than Muskoka and other than Great Lakes?
Oh, other than Muskoka and other than Great Lakes, oh God. Okay. What have I been enjoying? I mean, I always go back to Jutsu from Bellwoods.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Favorite Muskoka beer of all time?
Oh, a Detour.
Detour?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Spring Oddity just because, or the Pilsner Light. Name your celebrity doppelganger.
I was told a lot as a child that I look like Helen Hunt.
Helen Hunt? Okay. How many books have you read in the last 5 years? Because I know you're a reader.
Is this tailored specifically to me?
This
or do you
is
always
tailored
ask?
Specifically to you.
About 200.
About 200.
Yeah.
Okay.
I read a lot.
You do.
Yeah.
Best thing to do when visiting Muskoka?
My favorite thing to do is just sit on the dock with a speaker in the sun, a bunch of friends, a cooler of beer, and just be like jumping off the dock all day.
Perfection.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to answer the best time and place for a beer.
Oh yeah, on the dock.
On the dock.
Or a campfire.
Anything indoors it is what you're saying.
Yeah. Outdoors.
Outdoors. Endorse it. Name a person or brewery in the industry that has or continues to inspire you.
I've always been a big fan of Sierra Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
They're still an independent family-owned brewery. I think
second generation.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it says I've always liked this about them. I think on the rim of their can it says family-owned, operated, and argued over, which I 100% relate to. And I think their journey's been similar to ours, like stemming from the pale ale and then building their brewery, like their growth off of IPAs and continuing to innovate. So, I'm always paying attention to what they're doing.
They're a little bigger than Muskoka.
A little bigger. Yeah. Aspirational.
Yes, for sure. Well, we got to get some tax law changed in
Absolutely.
both the province and the federally in Ottawa. Favorite brewery you've ever toured?
I did an unreal tour of Dogfish Head back in the day. We did a VIP brewery tour. We were there for 4 or 5 hours. We were drinking Burton Baton up in the tree house that they have on the front lawn. And then
the eccentric treehouse.
Oh my, yeah. It was from like Burning Man or something. It was an art piece, I think. Yeah. And then we went over to the tap room that they have in Rehoboth Beach. And I'll never forget that day. It was so much fun. I was so hungover the next day. But
Did you do bocce ball while you were there too? They have a big bocce ball court.
Honestly, it was November, so probably not. Yeah.
If you could have a beer with just one person in the entire world, dead or alive, famous or not, who would you choose?
Taylor Swift.
We were just talking about that off air. Favorite place to grab a beer in Canada?
Probably the Griffin Pub in Bracebridge.
Okay, that's nice and close to home.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to Taylor Swift. Do you think she will ever drink craft beer? Do you think she ever has had a craft beer?
I think she has. Yeah.
You should send some.
Oh, man.
You should try to send some.
I've tried.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't actually sent her anything, but that's a story for another day.
And last one, best hangover cure.
More sleep and another beer.
Oh, I thought you were going to go having another beer on the dock the next day or jumping in the lake in the morning. I
mean, that's also a good hangover. But for me, it's always either one more drink or more sleep.
Well, there we go. I called you Christine here at the end of this. Kristin, this has been an absolute pleasure. Sincerely, I had a great time hearing your story and love how you and Muskoka have handled your time with the company. And I'm really looking forward, as someone who loves like that continuation of brewing history and lore, the continued relationship we're going to have for years to come and to see where you go next. So thanks for making the time, and we'll talk again really soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Cheers.
Well, how's your doodle? Rollin' Baggage here, rollin' solo down here at Sunnyside Beach. I likes to get here nice and early to grabs me some prime sandy real estate. I lays out me towel, slather myself liberally with tannin butter, and soak in some tasty vitamin D. Speaking of tasty, looky in me cooler box. A whole gaggle of Sunnyside Session IPA. Big on the taste, low on the alcohol. A springtime, summertime, anytime treat, and a permanent staple in the grips of me fingers. Oh, and check out the can to see a brand new me. Been lifting some iron to boost me biceps, triceps, and me deltoids. You know what they say, sun's out, guns out. Work your tan and crack a can of Sunnyside Session IPA.
Before we wrap up this episode, I have some GLB propaganda that I want to share with you. Did you know that GLB has a run club? If you didn't, now you do. Join us on Thursdays at 6 p.m., every Thursday at 6 p.m., for a 6-kilometer run that ends with a complimentary 12-ounce pour in either the tap room or, depending on where we run to, you'll get a beer there. Meet other runners, bond over some fresh GLB, and get in shape at the same time. And on May 2nd, Dos Llevos Mexican Lager and Dos Llevos Lime will be hitting the brewery, taps, fridges, all the things, and we'll be throwing a big party. Come grab a glass of Dos Llevos Original or Lime at the brewery in Etobicoke. We'll have food, tacos from 4 to 9, and Mexican Amigo Mariachi Band bringing the vibe from 6 to 8 p.m. And then the next day on May 3rd, because we just can't wait for Cinco de Mayo, we're going to have both beers flowing at the brew pub at Lower Jarvis Street, and we're going to have a Mexican-themed menu all day, and Mariachi Trio Mexico Amigo is going to be back again for at the brew pub. Then we have something cool going on at the brewery in Etobicoke on Saturday, May 10th. Mike Boone recording this. He's going to bring his scrap to support Mimico Lacrosse. So you got some old junk taking up space. We want it. Not we, but we're gonna host them. Donations of used appliances, metal items, and electronics will help raise funds that will go directly towards funding lacrosse programs for children and youth. So bring your toasters, faulty fridges, purposeless pieces of metal, and melted microwaves. Oh my God, whoever wrote this is a genius. So that Andrew Sobach can turn it into cash to support the Mimico Minor Lacrosse Club's Baby Peanuts program for girls and boys aged 3 to 4. If you're looking for more information on all that, you can go to our website and look under the events header. And that's it. That's all, folks. Episode 34 with Kristin MacDonald, Muskoka Half Pint, has moved from the mash tun to the fermenters. I really did enjoy hearing Kristin's story about her rise through her roles at Muskoka over the years, starting to get into the second and third generation of kids coming into senior positions at family-owned breweries across Canada. And it was nice to hear the passion in her voice speaking about that and Muskoka. And if you enjoyed, please leave a review or a comment wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode was fueled by cans of Sunnyside Session IPA, which you can find all over Ontario at the beer store, LCBO, select grocery stores, convenience stores, and at both GLB retail locations. Cans are also available online at greatlakesbeershop.ca for free local home delivery. Visit us at the brewery at 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard in Etobicoke, or grab some delicious eats and fresh pours at our brew pub at 11 Lower Jarvis Street in Toronto. You know what they say, sun's out, guns out, work your tan and crack a can of Sunnyside Session IPA. And remember, Monday, April 28th is Election Day in Canada. Please vote. If you have any content you'd love to hear us discuss on the show, guest ideas, or just want to tell us what you're drinking, drop us a line at podcast@greatlakesbeer.com. Until next time, please remember to keep tipping your glass of fresh GLB in the right direction. Supporting local never tasted so good.